morning again, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started with our program now. Please continue enjoying your lunch, but do try and keep the conversation down so that we can hear all of our great 10 top women as they speak. The 10 women we are honoring today share a common bond. Yes, they are all exceedingly accomplished, caring, selfless leaders who contribute countless hours to our communities. Still, there's something you may not read in the bios and something you may not see in the video interviews. And that is the legacy that these women are creating. Woodrow Wilson is quoted as saying, "You are not here merely to make a living. You are here to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. You are here to enrich the world." The women seated before you today are proof of what happens when you dedicate your life and your legacy to enriching the world. Our first honoree is very deliberate about the legacy she wants to leave. Simply put, she calls it social justice. Dr. Mary Ann Shear Angel found out about her Native American heritage later in life, but not too late to tap into a sense of genetic memory and the need to help disadvantaged groups. She began incorporating Native American studies in the middle of pursuing her PhD. This launched a life-altering journey for her and one of her sons as they traveled across the Dakotas with a nonprofit to collect the oral histories of Native American elders. This cultural immersion further solidified her calling to raise awareness for those who can't speak for themselves. She seeks to empower all walks of life. As a young mother, she fought for education reform for 15 years, partly because of the needs that she saw in her children, and partly because of the needs that she saw in our community. A key achievement during this time was the launch of the Dayton chapter of Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Disorder, or commonly known as CHADD. As a University of Dayton communications professor, she has served as a special advisor to at-risk students and founded the Circle of Life initiative. Besides workshops, events, and projects, she coordinates an annual multicultural festival at UD. To further give voice and visibility to Native Americans, she also co-founded the nonprofit Two Trees, Inc. with her business partner, Dane Weinkoff. What's most inspiring about this group is the mission to build cultural bridges and foster safe havens for youth here and in South Dakota. Two Trees was created in response to the tragic death of a 17-year-old who lived her entire life on a reservation before visiting Dayton to share her story. Fueled by Dr. Angel's tenacious yet compassionate spirit, as well as her deep belief in the Teoshpie, or family, Circle of Light and Two Trees work in tandem to promote diversity, build relationships, and leverage collaboration. In spite of, or perhaps because of, her humble Appalachian beginnings, Dr. Angel is a force in our community.
Gosh, that almost made me cry. In March 2001, Dave Weinkoff and I coordinated the first Circle of Light event at the University of Dayton. One of our goals was to begin building long-term reciprocal relationships between Native Americans and communities in the greater Dayton area. One of the young women who attended was a 17-year-old Hunkpapa woman named Lakota Rose Madison. She stayed with my family while she spent 10 days doing presentations and making friends with many young people in Dayton. During this time, Lakota discovered that she and her new friends came from communities that shared many of the same problems, such as violence, drugs, poverty, and suicide. Before she left, Lakota told Dave and I that she had a vision of building 2 safe houses, one in her hometown of Little Eagle, South Dakota, and one in Dayton. She envisioned these structures to be places where youth from both communities could be safe, learn about their own cultures, and visit each other. A few months later, she called to ask Dave and I if she could come back to Dayton for the summer to work on her vision. We worked out the details, and on June 12th, I called Lakota and told her that Dave and I were leaving for the reservation, and I had her airline ticket in my bag. That night, she was torture-murdered. On the day of the funeral, Kathy Mong of the Dayton Daily News wrote an article about Lakota's story. When I returned to UD, there were messages on my voicemail from people who wanted to get involved in the Safe House Project, later named the Peace Place Project. You're probably thinking that Lakota Rose's story or the Peace Place Project is what inspires me the most. But the thing that inspires me the most is the Tioshbaye that was born as a result of Lakota's story. Tioshbaye is the Lakota word for extended family, and it is important to note that in the Lakota culture there is no distinction between adopted or biological family members. I would like to conclude by saying that Robin Herman, a Tioshbaye member and founder of Humblecha House, once said he had spent many years doing beautiful and meaningful work that inspired him, but it was a lonely life until he found his soulmates and fellow travelers to share the journey. The author De Crescenzo has said, "We are all angels with one wing. We can only fly while embracing one another. Although we are called by God to work in our families and communities, in the end, the most inspiring work is not altruistic service. It is building Tioshbayes full of angels with only one wing." Could my Tioshbaye please stand? I want to say that you inspire me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Ann.